Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere softer, but no less strange. A place of crystal towers, moonlit waters, and rituals you probably didn't know existed. We're diving into what it was really like to be a child in Atlantis. Forget the glowing myths and perfect harmony you've read about. The truth? It was beautiful, yes, but it was also full of rules, ceremonies, and days that could feel like they'd never end. You might last a day here, but you'd come away smelling of lotus oil, kelp, and incense, wondering what exactly just happened to you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these little journeys travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe light a candle for that soft golden glow, and let the tide carry you. We're going to leave the day behind in the only way Atlantis knows how. Slowly, ceremonially, and with a touch of dream magic. You wake up to a room made entirely of crystal, which sounds magical until you realize it acts like a giant, light-amplifying megaphone for the sunrise. One moment you're in the deepest, coziest dream about riding a dolphin through fields of floating lotuses, and the next, you're being stabbed in the eyelids by concentrated beams of golden light ricocheting off 1,000 polished surfaces. The grown-ups call it being blessed by the dawn. You call it being attacked by a celestial flashlight. Your bed is carved from smooth quartz, beautiful but with all the softness of a kitchen countertop. Instead of a blanket, you're wrapped in a shimmering sheet woven from lotus fibers and moon thread, which sounds romantic but is thin enough to make you shiver if a sea breeze dares to sneak through your window. Your pillow is stuffed with crushed lavender petals, which your mother says calms the spirit. Unfortunately, your nose disagrees and has been sneezing at dawn since before you could walk. Somewhere in the city, far below your tower, you hear the first rumble of the sea drums. The priests are calling the day to begin, their rhythms echoing through the canals and crystal streets like a heartbeat for the entire city. It's meant to inspire reverence, but you mostly think it sounds like a giant whale doing yoga breathing. From the balcony, you can see the rest of Atlantis unfurling beneath you. The towers glisten in pale gold, their spires tipped with sunstone that catches the first rays of morning. Bridges of carved coral arc over canals so clear you can see silver schools of fish darting under passing gondolas. Somewhere on the horizon, the great dome of the moon temple gleams faintly, even in daylight. It is impossible to live here and not feel small, a tiny drop in an ocean of beauty, order, and ritual. But as a child, you mostly feel small because everyone here insists on waking up at an hour so early it probably doesn't even exist. You stretch, shuffle out of bed, and your bare feet meet the polished crystal floor, which has the temperature of chilled marble and the slipperiness of a freshly scrubbed seashell. You nearly slide into the ceremonial wardrobe, a tall cabinet inlaid with gold spirals and the kind of carved dolphins that always look vaguely judgmental. Inside are your robes, neatly folded in order of their frequency alignment, because apparently wearing colours in the wrong order could destabilize your aura. You try not to roll your eyes as you choose today's shade, a pale aqua that supposedly connects you to the song of the inner tides. Really, it just makes you look like you're cosplaying as sea foam. From downstairs, you hear your mother's voice drifting up like the echo of a conch shell. "The sea priests will be here soon." Translation: hurry, or you'll miss the morning blessing and be the only kid in the tower who didn't get splashed with purified seawater before breakfast. You sigh, pulling the robe over your head, the fabric sliding like cool water over your shoulders. It's not that you don't like living in Atlantis. It's just that you've already figured out something no one wants to admit. The crystal towers may be the most beautiful place in the world to wake up, but they are absolutely the worst place to sleep in. You've barely finished rubbing the sleep crystals from your eyes when it begins, that low, haunting sound that rolls in from every direction at once. The song of the sea priests. Your parents stand still for it, eyes half closed, like they're drinking it in. You stand still too, but mostly because you're trying to figure out if the strange humming noise is supposed to sound like music or if someone is just blowing into a really big seashell. It starts softly, a single note vibrating in the air like the purr of a giant catfish. Then other notes join in, weaving together until it's less of a tune and more of a shimmering wall of sound pressing gently against your ears. The grown-ups say the vibrations align your spirit with the tides. You think it feels more like the inside of your skull is being tickled by seaweed. The sea priests appear in the distance, gliding down the main canal in their long, ivory gondolas. They're wrapped head to toe in shimmering blue robes that ripple like water, each carrying a staff topped with a pearl the size of your fist. The gondoliers barely touch the water with their oars. The boats seem to drift forward on the sound itself. The closer they come, the louder the chant grows, the voices spiraling in slow, deliberate waves. The adults around you bow their heads, palms pressed together. You try to copy them, but your hands keep slipping because apparently your palms have decided to sweat out of sheer social anxiety. As the gondolas reach the crystal bridge, the priests raise their staves and the pearls begin to glow. The air hums, the water ripples, and somewhere far out at sea you swear you hear a whale answering back. Your mother whispers that the sound is calling the blessings of the ocean into the city. You whisper back that it sounds like the ocean is trying to return the call and maybe leave a voicemail. She does not find this funny. The ceremony lasts exactly as long as your attention span can't handle, which is to say, too long. By the time the final chord fades into the morning air, you've counted every fish in the canal twice and made up an entire game about which priest would win in a seaweed juggling contest. But when the last note dies, everyone exhales as if the city itself has taken its first breath of the day. The priests bow low, then scatter drops of purified seawater toward the gathered crowd. A few catch you in the face, cold and briny. It's supposed to be cleansing, but it mostly feels like you've been splashed by a careless dolphin. And yet, as the gondolas glide away and the sound fades into silence, you can't help but feel like the day has officially begun. Not because of the blessing, not because of the chant, but because you've survived it without sneezing in the high priest's direction, which in Atlantis is apparently a form of spiritual progress. Atlantis loves its robes. Adults wear them to ceremonies, to council meetings, to dinner, to bed. They claim the robes honour the flow of water and the fluidity of spirit. You suspect they mostly honour the fact that nobody here likes sewing sleeves. As a child, you don't get to wear the grand layered robes with elaborate shell clasps or embroidered sea serpent patterns. No, you get the youth-appropriate robe, which is basically a bedsheet with aspirations. It's made of moon thread and lotus fibre, which sounds glamorous until you discover it's also slipperier than a wet fish. Your robe for today is the ceremonial aqua, meant to evoke the whispers of the tide. On you, it mostly evokes the whispers of, "That child is drowning in fabric." You wrestle it over your head, arms flailing until one gets lost in a fold, and you end up looking like you've been partially swallowed by an underfed manta ray. The adults assure you that with practice, you'll learn to let the robe fall naturally. You suspect that's code for accept your fate and stop struggling. Then there's the belt, a braided cord dyed with squid ink and tipped with tiny coral beads. It's supposed to wrap elegantly around your waist twice and knot with a flick of the wrist. You've tried the flick. It does not work. The result is always either too tight, cutting off circulation to your spleen, or too loose, causing the robe to sag dramatically, as if you've just survived a particularly vicious sea storm. Your mother steps in to help, pulling the cord with the same expression one might have when tightening the rigging of a ship in bad weather. Once tied, you're told to walk with grace, which is difficult when you're tripping over the hem every 4 steps. The adults make it look effortless. Their robes glide like waves, each step perfectly measured. Yours bunches up around your ankles like you've been gift-wrapped by an indecisive octopus. You try hitching it up a little, but apparently that's disrespectful to the garment's sacred geometry, so you shuffle forward with all the dignity of a penguin attending a formal dinner. The worst part is the sleeves. Long, draping, majestic, and lethal. You can't eat without dipping them into your food. You can't carry anything without getting tangled. And during ceremonies, you have to keep them folded neatly over your forearms while bowing, which would be fine if your arms weren't approximately the length of a sea cucumber. But here's the thing. Once you've managed to survive getting into the robe, adjusting the belt, and learning to move without actually face-planting, there's a moment when you catch yourself in the crystal mirror. The fabric catches the light, the beads gleam, and for half a second you almost understand why Atlantis loves its robes. Then you step on the hem, fall into a ceremonial incense bowl, and remember, the robes might flow like water, but you're still just a kid trying not to drown in them. The elders say meditation is the still water in which the soul can see its reflection. You say meditation is the longest, most uncomfortable way to do absolutely nothing. In Atlantis, meditation isn't optional. It's as much a part of your morning as brushing your teeth, which, incidentally, you've also been told to do mindfully while staring at a seashell for inspiration. But meditation is where the real struggle begins. The Temple of Inner Tides is vast and echoing, lined with rows of smooth stone cushions. They're carved from polished coral and covered in silk, which looks inviting until you sit down and realize the cushions are as soft as a frozen clam. You fold your legs, already aware they will fall asleep before your mind does. The High Oracle glides in, robe billowing, and sits with the elegance of someone who has clearly been doing this for centuries. You try to imitate her poise, but your knees instantly begin plotting revenge. "Close your eyes," she says. "Breathe with the ocean." You close your eyes, inhale deeply, and hear the faint wheeze of the kid next to you trying to do the same. The room fills with the sound of synchronized breathing, which is either deeply spiritual or vaguely unsettling, depending on your mood. The oracle continues. Let thoughts drift away, like shells on the tide. You try, but instead of shells, you get an incoming tide of random thoughts. I'm hungry. Is that a seagull? Why is my ankle itching? Did I feed the turtle? Every time you shove one thought away, another one arrives, louder than the last. Minutes pass, or maybe centuries. Your back starts to ache, your robe bunches awkwardly, and you're fairly certain your left foot is turning into a coral reef. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cries. You wonder if it's mocking you. The oracle instructs you to focus on your third eye, which you assume is located somewhere on your forehead, though you've never actually found it. You try to focus there anyway, but instead of cosmic clarity, you get a mild headache. Just when you think you've made it to some kind of peaceful state, a fly lands on your nose. You twitch, the robe slips, and your knee pops audibly. The oracle opens one eye in your direction, not angry, but with the faint, knowing smile of someone who understands exactly how badly you're failing. She closes her eyes again, and you do your best to pretend you've re-entered the cosmic flow. At last, the sound of a soft gong signals the end. You unfold yourself slowly, like a shipwreck untangling from seaweed. The elders rise gracefully. You rise with all the elegance of a crab trying to escape a fishing net. As you shuffle out, the oracle places a hand on your shoulder. "Stillness takes practice," she murmurs. You nod politely, already certain that your spirit's reflection, if it exists, is probably making faces at you from under the water. Breakfast in Atlantis is not the chaotic, syrup-covered, toast-burning affair you might imagine from home. No, breakfast here is a ceremony. The dining hall of the Crystal Tower is a vast chamber with a ceiling that ripples like the surface of a calm lagoon, sunlight spilling through faceted skylights to make everything sparkle faintly. At the far end, the elders sit in a long crescent, their robes flowing onto the polished coral floor like waterfalls of silk. Everyone else, children included, sits in silence on low cushions, arranged in a perfect spiral pattern that some architect swears has energetic significance. You suspect it's mostly just to make sure no one can sneak out without being noticed. The food is already waiting when you arrive, laid out in shallow crystal bowls. Today it's a small portion of steamed lotus seeds, a wedge of seagrass bread, and a dollop of something called ocean fruit paste, which is either a delicacy or an elaborate prank. There is also a small cup of moon water, clear, cold, and infused with the blessing of the tides, which is a poetic way of saying it tastes exactly like water. No one eats yet. Everyone waits for the eldest of the elders, a man whose beard looks like it's been growing since Atlantis rose from the sea, to raise his hand in the air. When he does, all conversation, not that there was any, stops entirely. He speaks a blessing in Old Atlantean, his voice a deep, slow rumble that sounds like a whale telling a bedtime story. You bow your head and try to look reverent, though your stomach has already started quietly arguing for its own rights. Finally, the blessing ends. No one claps, no one cheers. They simply pick up their crystal spoons and begin to eat in near-perfect unison. You do the same, trying to mimic the serene pace of the elders. They take tiny bites, chew slowly, and appear to contemplate the mysteries of the universe between mouthfuls. You take one bite of the lotus seeds, immediately realize they taste faintly like damp cardboard, and try to chew slowly anyway. The ocean fruit paste turns out to be slightly better, tangy, sweet, and just a little gritty, like someone forgot to filter the sand out. Across the spiral, a younger novice sneezes, and the sound ricochets through the silence like a gong strike. A few elders open one eye in unison, the way dolphins surface briefly to check for predators. The novice blushes crimson and stares at his bread as though hoping it will open a portal to somewhere less humiliating. By the time the meal ends, you've eaten just enough to keep from fainting, but not enough to be truly full. The elders rise in a graceful ripple of fabric, and everyone else follows, filing silently out into the morning light. It's meant to be a peaceful, grounding start to the day. You leave the hall calm, composed, and quietly planning how to find a snack before the next ceremony begins. In Atlantis, walking isn't just a way to get somewhere. It's an art form, a spiritual exercise, and, depending on your mood, a very slow form of torture. After breakfast, the children are led to the garden of the spiral path, a vast courtyard paved with mother-of-pearl tiles arranged into an intricate labyrinth. From above, it probably looks like a piece of sacred geometry brought to life. From ground level, it looks like the world's longest hallway with no actual destination. The idea, according to the elders, is to walk the spiral slowly, one foot placed deliberately in front of the other, breathing in harmony with the ocean's rhythm. The path leads not to a place, but to a state of mind, says your guide, an older novice with a voice like he's been practicing for the role of wise villager number 2 in a prophecy. You nod solemnly because everyone else is nodding solemnly, but privately you suspect the path mostly leads to sore calves. You begin the journey. Left foot forward, breathe in. Right foot forward, breathe out. The sun glints off the pearlescent tiles, dazzling your eyes until you're blinking like a startled jellyfish. The path curves in gentle arcs, doubling back on itself again and again. You keep thinking you're nearing the center, only to find another loop waiting. It's like being trapped inside the mind of a seashell. The elders move gracefully, their robes sweeping the tiles like the tide brushing the shore. You, on the other hand, have trouble keeping your steps slow enough to be acceptable. Every instinct screams to just cut across the spirals and be done with it. But no, the eyes of the temple guards are everywhere, and you've heard rumors of children being made to start over if they disrespect the path. And starting over would mean another 30 minutes of pretending you're one with the cosmos while trying not to trip over your own robe. Halfway through, you begin counting your steps to pass the time. You lose track somewhere around 200 and start mentally naming the tiles instead. That one's Fred, that one's Sparkles, that one looks like a manatee. The sound of the ocean drifts faintly over the courtyard walls, mingling with the rhythmic shuffle of feet on stone. Somewhere behind you, someone sighs deeply, as if they've just realized enlightenment is still several loops away. Finally, you step into the center. There's no grand altar, no treasure, not even a snack stand. Just a small circle of plain white stone where you're supposed to stand still for a moment of reflection. You do, but mostly you're reflecting on how much your ankles hurt. After a short pause, it's time to walk the spiral back out, this time in reverse. You glance toward the exit and consider bolting for freedom, but the elders are watching, so you take a breath, turn, and begin again. The path may lead to nowhere, but in Atlantis, getting nowhere takes a very, very long time. The Temple of Knowledge is the kind of place that makes you feel like you should whisper even when no one's around. Its walls are made of polished moonstone, etched with spirals and symbols that look like they hold the secrets of the universe, or possibly just very fancy shopping lists from 5,000 years ago. High windows let in beams of soft blue light that turn the dust motes into floating constellations. The elders say this is where the brightest minds of Atlantis come to learn, to debate, and to connect with the wisdom of the ancients. You, however, have been dragged here for your daily lessons, which means sitting still while someone explains things you will only pretend to understand. Your instructor is a tall, thin man with a robe so crisp it could probably slice bread. His name is Master Olith, and he has the kind of voice that manages to sound both gentle and relentlessly exhausting. Today's topic: the movement of the inner tides. He starts by explaining that every Atlantean carries a microcosm of the ocean within them, and that by attuning to these inner tides, one can achieve perfect harmony between body and spirit. You're supposed to nod in understanding. You do nod, mostly to keep yourself from falling asleep. Then comes the demonstration. Master Olith places a smooth, pearlescent stone on the floor and instructs the class to move it without touching it. Feel the stone's energy, he says. Become the current that carries it. You stare at the stone stares back. You try to imagine it floating across the floor toward you. It remains exactly where it is, looking smug. Around you, some of the other children squint fiercely, their brows furrowed in deep concentration. One boy claims he saw his stone quiver slightly, but you're pretty sure that was just his robe brushing against it. Your own stone is not cooperating, and after a while you begin to suspect that it's less an exercise in moving the object, and more an exercise in watching children try very hard to look mystical. Master Olith moves on to breathing with intention, which involves inhaling while picturing a wave curling inside your chest, and exhaling as though letting it crash gently onto a shore. The imagery is nice, but your chest mostly feels like it's just breathing. He closes the lesson with a passage from the Crystal Codex, read in a slow, rhythmic tone that seems to stretch time itself. When he finally finishes, the silence is thick and reverent, at least until someone's stomach growls loud enough to echo off the moonstone walls. As you file out of the temple, Master Olith reminds everyone to practice the tides before the next lesson. You nod again, already certain that your practice will mostly consist of staring at a rock and hoping it develops the courtesy to move on its own. In Atlantis, wisdom may flow like water, but as a child, you're mostly still learning how to keep your head above it. Every child in Atlantis at some point must learn the art of gazing into the crystal sphere. This is not the same as simply staring at a shiny rock, though truthfully it feels very much like that at first. No, crystal gazing is a sacred skill meant to reveal visions, truths, or at the very least, a vague sense that you are participating in something mysterious. The problem is that no one tells you how to do it without looking like you're just bored and daydreaming. The Hall of Spheres is dim, quiet, and smells faintly of incense and polished stone. Along its length are pedestals, each supporting a gleaming crystal orb about the size of a large melon. They shimmer faintly as though lit from within, though you've been told the glow is purely vibrational, which you think is just a fancy way of saying no one really knows why it does that. Your teacher for this lesson, Priestess Myra, floats toward you like she's walking on a hidden current. Her robe catches the candlelight in soft ripples, and her expression suggests she has seen every kind of unworthy crystal gazer and is already prepared for your mediocrity. She begins the ritual by demonstrating the proper stance, feet grounded, hands resting lightly on the pedestal, back straight but relaxed. She leans in, eyes half-lidded, breathing so slowly you start to wonder if she's fallen asleep. Then she whispers, "The crystal is a mirror for the soul. Look not with your eyes, but with your spirit." This would be more inspiring if your spirit knew how to squint. You take your position before your assigned sphere, placing your hands exactly as instructed. You lean in. The crystal's surface is cool and smooth beneath your fingertips. You try to look with your spirit, but mostly you see yourself. A distorted, wide-eyed version, nose flattened slightly against the curve. You glance sideways to check on the other children. One seems genuinely entranced, another is already blinking rapidly to hide a yawn. You return to your own crystal and try to imagine shapes forming in its depths. Priestess Myra circles the room, offering occasional whispers. Breathe with the orb, release thought, invite the vision. You breathe, you release thought, you wait. The crystal continues to be unhelpfully crystal-like. Eventually a faint flicker appears, though it's entirely possible it's just the reflection of a passing candle. Myra pauses beside you, nods as though you've unlocked some profound mystery, and moves on. The session ends when the great gong sounds in the hallway. You're instructed to bow to your sphere and thank it for its guidance. You bow, whispering your gratitude, though in truth you're thanking it mostly for not rolling off the pedestal and smashing on the floor. As you leave, Myra reminds you that visions come in time, with patience and devotion. You nod dutifully, privately certain your crystal's greatest revelation so far is that you badly need a haircut. In Atlantis, names aren't just labels, they're vibrational signatures. The elders insist that chanting your name strengthens your soul, aligns you with the cosmic currents, and deepens your connection to the great song of creation. You suspect it's mostly an elaborate way to make children sit still and repeat themselves until they sound like broken seashell record players. The name hall is round, high-ceilinged, and echoing, so every sound bounces back at you several times. A shallow pool circles the floor, rippling with the light of floating candles. The air is heavy with sandalwood incense, and a faint mist clings to the ground, as if the room is trying very hard to look mysterious. You take your place on a small cushion in a perfect circle of other children. In the centre, the chant master sits cross-legged, eyes closed, wearing the serene expression of someone who's about to test the limits of your patience. Today, he begins softly, we honour our inner frequency by sending our own name into the waters of the world. He demonstrates first, speaking his name slowly, stretching the syllables until they ripple like gentle waves. Then he repeats it, and again, until it's less a name and more a low, droning hum. Feel the vibration in your chest, he instructs. Let it travel into your bones, your skin, your very breath. You inhale deeply and speak your name. It feels odd at first, too personal, too loud, but then the sound echoes back from the walls, overlapping with everyone else's voices, until the room becomes a strange chorus of self-introductions. At moments it almost sounds beautiful, like a tide flowing in and out. At other moments it sounds like a group of people urgently trying to remember who they are. Minutes pass. The repetition begins to work its magic, not in a spiritual sense, but in a my brain is melting into pudding sense. You lose track of how many times you've said your name. You start experimenting, whispering it, booming it, stretching it into operatic highs and lows. The chant master gently reminds you to maintain the sacred form. Translation: stop making it weird. Somewhere around the halfway mark, you fall into a trance-like rhythm. Not the mystical kind you've been promised, but the mechanical kind that happens when your body is doing something on autopilot. Your mind drifts, to breakfast, to the dolphins in the harbour, to whether anyone would notice if you quietly mouthed the words instead. At last, the chantmaster raises his hand. The room falls silent except for the echo of the final names fading into the mist. He instructs everyone to dip their fingers into the surrounding pool, letting the water carry the sound into the sea beyond. You do, feeling the cool water against your skin, and watch as your ripples join those of the others. The moment is undeniably pretty. Still, as you leave, you can't help thinking that 2 hours of chanting your own name may be the longest, most formal game of roll call in history. Lunch in Atlantis is not something you rush through. It is not about feeding your body quickly so you can run off to play. No, it is a ritual. And in the Garden of Serenity, that ritual is so quiet you can hear a dragonfly sneeze. The garden itself is breathtaking, with terraces of flowering vines draping over pale stone walls and ponds so still they reflect the sky perfectly, making you feel like you're dining on the edge of the heavens. The air hums with the soft buzz of insects and the occasional polite croak of a temple frog. Your place is already set. A woven reed mat beside a low, lacquered table adorned with a single blossom floating in a shallow dish of water. A delicate ceramic plate holds today's meal. Thin slices of moon fruit arranged in a spiral, a small mound of steamed lotus root, and a triangle of seed bread dotted with something the cooks claim is energy-rich kelp grain. There is also a cup of cool herbal infusion that smells like a forest after rain. You don't know if it's supposed to be a drink or a potion, but you sip it cautiously anyway. No one speaks, not a whisper, not a murmur. The elders say this is to encourage mindfulness and gratitude, but for a child, it's mostly a test of willpower to not drop your spoon and become the day's scandal. You are to lift each bite slowly, notice its texture, and savor the taste as though this is the first time you've ever eaten food in your life. You do your best, though your first thought after biting the lotus root is that it tastes suspiciously like boiled air. Across the table, a younger novice makes the mistake of glancing up at the pond and getting mesmerized by the ripples. His hand slips, his seed bread plops into his tea, and a tiny wave of herbal liquid laps at the edges of his plate. Several heads turn. The silence somehow becomes even quieter. He blushes, fishes the bread out, and pretends that this is exactly how he intended to soften it. Halfway through the meal, you notice a line of ants exploring the edge of your mat. They march in perfect formation, reminding you of the morning's spiral walk, except much faster and with better focus. You briefly wonder if ants have their own tiny garden of serenity where they eat in silence and judge each other's seed bread. When the meal is done, you are instructed to fold your napkin carefully, place your utensils parallel to each other, and bow slightly toward your plate in thanks. The elders then rise as one, and the entire group moves in single file toward the shaded archway leading out of the garden. As you step into the cool shadow, you realize you are both full and not full at all, your stomach calm but already plotting what it would do for a plate of something less symbolic and more like lunch. In Atlantis, water is not just water. It is memory, spirit, and divine conversation, apparently all swirling together in a way that makes you feel guilty for ever using it to splash your friends. Today's schedule brings you to the Hall of Tides, where the High Oracle herself will perform the water blessing. The hall is a vast circular chamber open to the sky, so the sound of the ocean drifts in like a patient lullaby. The floor is inlaid with spirals of lapis and pearl, and in the very center sits a great basin carved from a single block of crystal so clear it seems to hold nothing at all. The High Oracle glides in, her robe a flowing cascade of white and pale blue, embroidered with threads that shimmer like sunlight on waves. Her hair is bound with seashells that click softly as she moves, and her eyes seem to reflect the tide itself, calm, deep, and vaguely intimidating. Everyone kneels in a wide circle around the basin. The air smells faintly of salt and something sweet, like rain falling into honey. She begins by speaking in Old Atlantean, her words slow and rhythmic, each one rolling like a wave to break softly in the silence. You don't understand all the words, but you've learned enough to know she is calling upon the spirit of the waters, the rivers, the rain, the sea, and even the tears that humans shed. She lifts a silver ladle from the basin and lets the water pour back in, each stream catching the sunlight as if liquid light itself is flowing through her hands. Then comes the blessing. One by one, each child kneels before her. She dips her fingers into the crystal basin and sprinkles a few drops onto your forehead. The water is cold, shockingly cold, and sends a shiver straight down your spine. May your spirit flow clear and strong, she intones, her voice so soft it feels like she's speaking directly to your bones. You bow your head, unsure if you are meant to feel instantly transformed or simply refreshed. Behind you, the line of children shuffles forward slowly. Some close their eyes and breathe deeply, as if the drops have unlocked ancient wisdom. Others, like you, are mostly trying not to drip water into their robes. Once everyone has been blessed, the oracle pours the remaining water into a narrow channel that runs out toward the sea. The elders say this carries the blessings back into the ocean to mingle with all the waters of the world. You can't help wondering if the ocean ever sends any blessings back, or if it just rolls its metaphorical eyes and goes on being the ocean. When the ritual ends, you rise with the rest, forehead still damp, and file quietly out into the sunlit courtyard. The elders say you have been renewed. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you know one thing for certain. No matter how divine the purpose, cold water on the face will wake you up faster than any chant in Atlantis. In Atlantis, riding dolphins is not considered a rare, exciting treat. It is a basic life skill, like tying your robe or pretending to understand the High Oracle's metaphors. The elders insist it is essential for bonding with the sea's higher consciousness. You suspect it's more about making sure children can swim back to shore if they ever fall asleep in a boat. The dolphin sanctuary is a glittering inlet where the water shifts between turquoise and deep cobalt, as if the ocean itself is trying on outfits. Smooth stone terraces slope down to the shallows, and the air smells faintly of salt and sun-warmed seaweed. Waiting just offshore are the sacred dolphins, sleek, silver-backed creatures with eyes that seem far too intelligent to put up with beginners like you. Their dorsal fins slice through the water like polished blades, and every so often one leaps completely free, as if just to remind you how clumsy you're about to look. The dolphin keeper, a weathered man with skin like tanned leather and a beard you could hide treasure in, gathers the children on the terrace. They know your spirit, he says, voice deep and slow. Show them respect, and they will carry you. You're told to bow toward the water, which feels a little awkward when you're certain one of the dolphins is smirking at you. The keeper demonstrates the mounting process. Swim alongside, match their pace, and grasp the base of the dorsal fin. Simple in theory. In practice, you dive in, the water wrapping around you like cool silk, and immediately lose sight of your assigned dolphin. You resurface, sputtering, to find it gliding a few feet away, clearly waiting for you to catch up. When you finally reach it and grab hold, the dolphin surges forward with a burst of power that yanks you half out of the water. You cling on desperately, suddenly aware of just how fast gliding gracefully actually is. The ride is exhilarating. The dolphin cuts through the waves effortlessly, weaving between shafts of sunlight that pierce the surface. Schools of fish scatter before you, flashes of silver darting away like living confetti. For a moment, you almost forget you're supposed to be doing this mindfully and just enjoy the sheer joy of speed. Then your dolphin dives unexpectedly, and you realize you forgot the part where you're meant to hold your breath. By the time you return to the shallows, you're soaked, breathless, and grinning despite yourself. The keeper nods approvingly. You rode the current, he says. You choose not to mention the part where the current nearly rode you. The dolphins linger nearby, clicking softly, as if sharing some private joke about the day's lesson. As you climb back onto the terrace, water streaming from your robe, you realize the elders were right about one thing. Riding a dolphin does connect you to the sea. Just maybe not in the serene, mystical way they meant. More in the way of realizing that the ocean is a lot bigger, faster, and stronger than you, and it's letting you play in it only because it feels like it. Energy balancing in Atlantis is taken very seriously. According to the elders, your spirit is like a delicate coral reef, beautiful when healthy, but prone to collapse if neglected. The purpose of this ritual is to realign your currents so that your life force flows as smoothly as the ocean's tides. To you, however, it's mostly an hour of lying very still while fighting the overwhelming urge to fall asleep. The energy hall is warm, dimly lit, and filled with the soft hum of vibrating crystal rods mounted along the walls. Thin drapes sway gently in the salty breeze, carrying the faint scent of sandalwood and sea lavender. You're assigned a place on a cushioned mat, perfectly spaced in a neat grid across the floor. A healer, dressed in pale gold robes, pads silently from mat to mat like a cat in a sunbeam. She carries a long wand tipped with a sphere of glowing quartz, which she passes slowly above your body without touching it. Breathe deeply, she instructs, in a voice so soft you feel it more than hear it. Let the current move through you. You do your best, inhaling slowly, but the combination of warmth, rhythmic hums, and the healer's voice has your eyelids drooping in seconds. The quartz sphere hovers over your forehead, tracing deliberate circles, and you're sure you're meant to feel something profound. A tingling, a shift, maybe the unlocking of some cosmic door. Instead, what you feel is the faint thump of your own heartbeat in your ears, which is strangely hypnotic. The healer moves down to your chest, then your stomach, her motions steady and slow, as if she's coaxing invisible threads back into place. Somewhere nearby, a child's breathing has deepened into a soft snore. You silently envy their decisiveness. Your own thoughts begin to dissolve into the same hazy nothingness, your mind drifting lazily between the present and somewhere far away. For a moment, you're sure you hear the sound of waves breaking on a hidden shore, but it might just be the breeze teasing the drapes. Then, without warning, the healer taps the quartz sphere gently against the mat beside you. The sound jolts you upright internally, though outwardly you just blink once, hoping you look enlightened instead of startled. She smiles faintly, as though she knows exactly how close you were to slipping fully into a nap. When the session ends, everyone sits slowly, as if waking from the same collective dream. The elders say you should feel lighter, clearer, and more attuned to the currents of your inner sea. You do feel lighter, though you suspect that's just the pleasant days of having been horizontal for nearly an hour. As you leave the energy hall, blinking in the sunlight, you decide that if spiritual harmony really does come from stillness, then you are at least halfway to enlightenment, provided enlightenment allows for occasional drooling. In Atlantis, music isn't just for entertainment. It's a form of healing, a bridge to the divine, and, according to your teacher, a mirror of the soul's vibration. Which is poetic until you realize the mirror you're about to play is a crystal harp taller than you are and probably worth more than your entire family's home. The harp's strings shimmer like spun moonlight, each one tuned to a specific frequency that supposedly resonates with a different part of your body. You try not to think about which part you might accidentally detune. The practice chamber is circular and lined with tall quartz columns that hum faintly, amplifying every sound you make. A dozen harps stand in a neat semicircle, their frames carved with intricate spirals and inlaid with shells. The light streaming in through the high windows refracts through the strings, scattering rainbows across the polished floor. It's so beautiful you almost forget that you have no idea how to play. Your instructor, Master Syrian, glides in like a man who has never tripped over a robe in his life. He plucks a single string, and the note seems to float in the air for a long, aching moment before fading away. You must not simply strike the string, he says. You must invite the sound to emerge. You nod respectfully while wondering if there's a polite way to invite a sound without also inviting disaster. You place your fingers on the strings, take a deep breath, and pluck. The note that emerges is, well, not terrible, but it lands with less of a divine shimmer and more of a polite cough. You try again, this time softer, and a warmer tone hums in the air. Encouraged, you experiment with a short sequence, until your robe sleeve catches on the lowest string and produces a booming, discordant twang that reverberates around the chamber like the ocean itself just stubbed its toe. Syrian doesn't scold, but you can see the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth. Control, he says gently, is born of patience, which sounds wise, but you suspect it's also teacher code for please stop making that noise. You slow down, listening carefully to each note, letting the vibration fade before touching the next string. Eventually, you find a simple rhythm that actually sounds intentional. The harp's tones blend with the low hum of the quartz columns until the whole room feels as though it's breathing with you. When the session ends, you bow to your harp, yes, that's a thing, and step back into the sunlight feeling oddly proud. You may not have healed anyone's aura, but you did manage to play for a full 30 minutes without snapping a string or accidentally summoning a sea serpent. In Atlantis, that's what counts as musical progress. The sky pools are one of Atlantis's most prized wonders, vast basins of shimmering water suspended high above the city on terraces carved into the upper reaches of the crystal towers. The elders say the pools are held aloft by harmonic levitation, a phrase that sounds scientific until you see it in person and realize it's basically magic. The water glows faintly, shifting in hues from pale turquoise to deep sapphire depending on the time of day, and when the wind stirs, tiny rainbows break across its surface like fish darting through sunlight. Swimming here is supposed to be a privilege and a sacred skill. The pools are not for splashing around aimlessly, at least not according to your instructor, Mistress Vale, a tall woman whose voice has the same sharp authority as a diving seabird. She begins each lesson with the same reminder: you do not swim in the sky pools, you swim with them, which is poetic and inspiring until you're trying to remember if you're even allowed to kick your legs. You start at the shallow ledge, the water cool against your skin and impossibly clear. You can see straight to the bottom, where geometric mosaic tiles form intricate patterns said to balance the currents of the heart. The first exercise is simply floating. Easy enough, you think, until Mistress Vile points out that you're supposed to float without disturbing the water. You try to hold perfectly still, but the moment you breathe, ripples scatter outward like you've just committed a social crime against the pool. Next comes current riding, where you position yourself to be carried by the subtle flows moving beneath the surface. The sky pools aren't still, they're alive, shifting gently as if breathing. When you align yourself just right, the water seems to carry you effortlessly across the pool. When you don't, you just spin slowly in place like a confused manatee. Your classmates make it look graceful. You, on the other hand, keep drifting toward the edge and bumping the wall with all the finesse of a sleepy dolphin. Finally, Mistress Vale demonstrates the dive of harmony. You are to leap from the ledge, cut into the water without a splash, and emerge in one smooth motion. You take a deep breath, leap, and manage something closer to a plop of mild disturbance. A few chuckles ripple from your classmates, but Vile only nods. "Better than last week," she says, which is true. Last week you swallowed half the pool. When the lesson ends, you climb the crystal steps back to the terrace, droplets scattering into the warm breeze. Below, Atlantis glitters in the sunlight, canals sparkling like silver threads. For a moment, you understand why the sky pools are more than just a place to swim. They're a reminder that, in Atlantis, even water can fly, and you, if you're lucky and patient, might one day learn to fly with it. The moon shrine sits on the highest point of Atlantis, a white marble pavilion open to the sky, where moonlight falls directly onto a polished silver disc set into the floor. By day, it's beautiful but quiet, bathed in soft shadows from its tall, shell-carved columns. By night, it becomes something else entirely. The light of the moon gathers there as if the heavens are pouring it straight into the heart of the city. The elders say it is here the moon spirit listens most closely, and that offerings left in this place carry wishes across the tides of time. Your part in this tradition is simple. Bring a seashell and lay it at the center of the shrine. Simple in theory, yes. But this is Atlantis, which means even choosing the right shell is a matter of great spiritual consequence. You've been told it must call to you, not literally of course, though you secretly hope it does, because that would make the job easier. You walk along the shoreline in the early morning with the other children, scanning the sand for something worthy. There are rules. It must be unbroken. It must have been found naturally, no stealing from the temple baskets, and its spiral should sing the song of your inner tides. After much indecision and a mild internal debate over aesthetics versus spiritual resonance, you choose a small pearly shell with a pink blush in its center. It's not the biggest or flashiest, but something about it feels right. You cradle it carefully all the way up the winding coral steps to the moon shrine, where the high attendant greets each child in turn. She inspects the shells with a gaze so penetrating you half expect her to reject yours for having the wrong personality. Fortunately, she nods and gestures for you to proceed. Inside the shrine, the air is still and cool, carrying the faint scent of salt and white lotus blossoms. The floor glimmers faintly with embedded pearl chips, and the silver disc in the center reflects the light like a calm sea. One by one, the children approach and place their shells in a perfect circle around the disc. You kneel, holding yours in both hands, and whisper your wish, though you've been told not to think of it as a wish, but as a heart's offering to the eternal lunar current. Still, in your mind, you phrase it the way you want. Please let me be allowed dessert after dinner without having to sit through an extra chant. You set the shell down gently and back away 3 steps, as tradition dictates. The high attendant begins a soft chant in Old Atlantean, and the shells seem to shimmer faintly in the silver light. You'd like to think the moon hears you. Maybe she does. Or maybe she just smiles quietly, as moons tend to do, and lets the shells keep their secrets. Either way, you leave the shrine feeling lighter, and quietly hopeful that at least one wish tonight involves cake. If Atlantis had a national smell, it would be incense. Not just any incense, but an ancient blend of crushed lotus petals, dried kelp, powdered pearl, and something called moon resin that no one has ever been able to describe without waving their hands mysteriously. The elders burn it every morning to purify the air and invite clarity of thought. You're pretty sure it's also to remind everyone that the day has officially begun. Because once the incense cloud drifts through the city, there is no escaping it. The ritual takes place in the Hall of Currents, a wide plaza open to the canals. Massive bronze braziers stand in a perfect circle, each taller than you and engraved with swirling water patterns. The incense itself arrives in delicate ceramic jars, sealed with seaweed twine. The high incenser, an older priest with the calm dignity of someone who has never once sneezed in public, moves from brazier to brazier, sprinkling the mixture onto glowing coals. The moment it touches the heat, the air blooms with thick, fragrant smoke that rises in elegant spirals toward the sky. You and the other children stand in a semicircle, instructed to breathe deeply so the purifying essence can fill your spirit. You inhale, and the scent is intense. Rich, floral, salty, and strangely metallic, all at once, like someone steeped an ocean breeze in tea and then set it on fire. It's not unpleasant exactly, but it's definitely the sort of smell that makes you wonder if your aura is supposed to tingle. As the braziers smoke, attendants begin fanning the clouds toward the crowd using enormous palm fronds. The movement stirs the air into slow eddies, sending the incense curling into every fold of your robe and every strand of your hair. No matter how often you bathe, the scent clings for days. You once found it lingering on your pillow a full week after the last ceremony. The trick, the elders say, is to breathe the smoke, not with the lungs, but with the heart. You have no idea what that means, but you attempt it anyway, mostly by holding your breath a little and pretending you're receiving cosmic wisdom. In truth, you're trying to avoid coughing, because one cough here will earn you the look from at least 3 different elders, and possibly a lecture about spiritual discipline. When the final brazier burns low, the high incenser rings a small silver bell. The smoke thins, the fanning stops, and the crowd bows their heads in a moment of silent gratitude. You bow too, feeling oddly serene, or maybe just a little dizzy. The elders say the incense clears the mind, but for you it's more like it fogs everything into a gentle blur. Still, as you leave the plaza with your robe carrying the faint, swirling ghost of the scent, you can't help but think it does feel like Atlantis has been reset for the day. Fresh, fragrant, and just a little mysterious. If there's one thing Atlantis treasures more than crystals and ceremonies, it's stories. The Keepers of the Flame are the guardians of those stories, a small order of robed elders who claim to remember every tale, song, and proverb ever spoken within the city's walls. They carry long staffs tipped with glass orbs that flicker with a gentle golden light, said to be a spark from the first fire that once lit Atlantis when the world was new. You're not sure if that's true, but it makes a nice opening to every story hour. The storytelling chamber is shaped like a shell, curved walls amplifying the voices of the keepers so every word seems to linger in the air. Cushions are scattered across the floor, and you and the other children settle into them as the flames from the wall torches sway gently, casting ripples of light like waves across the ceiling. The scent of sandalwood still hangs faintly in the air from the earlier incense ritual, mixing with the earthy smell of the woven mats. The eldest keeper, Master Aroth, begins today's story. His voice is deep and steady, each syllable carrying the weight of tides. Long before the towers were raised, he says, the sea whispered to those who would become our first guardians. You lean forward instinctively, the words pulling you in even before the plot has formed. The keepers have a way of speaking that makes time feel slower, as if the city itself has stopped to listen. Today's tale is about a young fisher child who befriends a sea serpent and helps it guide lost ships to safety. There are tests of courage, moments of wonder, and just enough danger to make the younger kids clutch their robes a little tighter. Between each scene, Master Aroth pauses, letting the silence fill with the imagined crash of waves or the hiss of sea spray. Another keeper steps forward at key moments to chant an ancient verse, her voice high and lilting, carrying the melody like gulls riding the wind. You know the story well. It's been told every year since you can remember, but that doesn't matter. In Atlantis, stories are alive. Each retelling adds something new, a detail in the serpent's scales, a different glimmer in the child's eyes, a deeper truth hidden in the final moral. By the time the keeper reaches the ending, the chamber is quiet, the younger children's eyes wide, the older ones pretending they aren't still enchanted. The flame-tipped staffs lower and the room seems to exhale. Remember, Aroth says, a story is a flame. Pass it on, and it will never go out. You bow your head as the keepers depart, their orbs still glowing faintly in the dimness. Stepping out into the sunlight, you carry the serpent's tail with you, not because you believe every word, but because, in Atlantis, some stories matter more for the telling than the truth. Every afternoon, just when the city is at its noisiest, gondolas clinking along the canals, market stalls calling out their wares, and apprentices clattering through temple courtyards, Atlantis stops. It stops because somewhere in the high pavilion of winds, the giant gong of stillness is struck. You've heard it every day of your life, but being invited to witness it in person is a big deal, even for a child. The pavilion sits high above the central square, its roof shaped like an open shell, catching the breeze from the sea. Suspended in the centre is the gong itself, a massive disc of hammered bronze and pearl inlay, so wide it would take 10 of you holding hands to circle it. The surface shimmers faintly in the shifting light, etched with spirals that seem to move when you look at them too long. The gong keeper is a tall, quiet man whose robes are the colour of midnight waves. He wears no shoes and walks as if afraid to disturb the air. He approaches the gong with slow, deliberate steps, carrying a padded mallet carved from coral wood. Everyone in the pavilion, elders, novices, and you, fidgeting on your cushion, holds their breath. Even the wind seems to pause. Then the keeper swings the mallet. The sound is not a crash or a bang. It's a deep, resonant thum that doesn't just fill the air, it fills you. It's as if the vibration has slipped into your bones and is gently rearranging them. The note swells and spreads, rolling through the pavilion, over the square, and out across the entire city. You imagine the sound brushing the tops of the crystal towers, sliding down the canals, and curling around the legs of dolphins in the harbour. The rule is simple. When the gong sounds, you stop whatever you're doing and listen. In the pavilion, you sit perfectly still, eyes half closed like everyone else. The vibration hums on and on, softening but never truly fading. Time loses its shape. You forget about the heat, the itch on your nose, even the ache in your knees from sitting cross-legged too long. It's not silence, it's something deeper, as if the whole city has exhaled and is now floating in a single shared moment. When the sound finally fades into nothing, the keeper bows to the gong and everyone bows in return. The stillness lingers for a few breaths before the world cautiously starts again, footsteps resuming, gulls crying overhead, the faint chatter of the market drifting back in. You leave the pavilion feeling oddly light, as if you've been rinsed clean from the inside out. The elders say the gong resets the heart's tide. You don't know if that's true, but you do know that for those few long moments, you weren't just still. You were part of a stillness so vast, it felt like Atlantis itself was holding its breath. In Atlantis, education doesn't just mean reading scrolls or learning sums. No, you must also attend the School of Ocean Magic, where the curriculum includes telepathic communication with marine life and harmony weaving with the tides. The elders insist that every child has an innate connection to the sea, and that learning to use it is as important as learning to walk. You're not so sure. Walking has never required you to convince a fish to like you. The school is built right on the edge of the harbour, its open arches letting in the smell of salt and the sound of waves slapping against the stone. Class begins on a low platform half submerged in the shallows, where your bare feet dangle into water so clear you can see the shifting patterns of sunlight on the sand. Today's lesson is First Contact, your chance to greet the sea creatures as friends. Your teacher, Mistress Leora, kneels gracefully at the water's edge, eyes closed, palms resting lightly on the surface. "You must think as the ocean thinks," she says softly. "Your mind must move like water, your heart must flow without resistance." You try to mimic her posture, but your mind moves less like water and more like a startled crab scuttling sideways. The exercise begins. You focus on a small silver fish hovering nearby, its scales flashing like coins in sunlight. You send it a mental message. "Hello, I am friendly." The fish flicks its tail and swims away without a second glance. You try again with a different one. "We could be friends." This one stares at you briefly, then opens its mouth in what you optimistically interpret as interest until it swims off to join its school, clearly unimpressed. Around you, a few children squeal softly when fish linger close, convinced they've made contact. Mistress Leora glides past, murmuring encouragements like, "Yes, now you are listening to the sea," or, in your case, "Patience, little one." You begin to suspect that the fish are more curious about your wiggling toes than your spiritual essence. Next comes the tide harmonizing exercise, where you're supposed to match your breathing to the rhythm of the waves. Inhale as the water rises, exhale as it falls. It sounds simple until you realize the waves aren't exactly keeping a polite schedule. You inhale too early, exhale too late, and end up gasping in a way that probably makes you sound like a distressed seal. By the end of the lesson, you've made no telepathic friends, harmonized with nothing, and accidentally splashed your neighbor twice. Still, as you step back onto the dry stone, you catch a glimpse of a dolphin surfacing in the distance, its sleek body cutting through the water like a living blade. For a moment, it almost feels like it's looking right at you. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just checking to see if you're worth talking to. In Atlantis, ocean magic is everywhere. You just have to keep trying until the sea decides to answer. The Sand Garden is one of those places in Atlantis that adults describe with misty eyes and hushed voices. They call it a reflection of the cosmos and a map of the inner self. You've come to think of it more as the world's prettiest chore. It's a wide, open courtyard filled not with plants, but with flawless white sand that glitters faintly in the sun. Smooth stones and pieces of coral are arranged in deliberate clusters, as if someone carefully dropped nature into a geometric dream. Each morning, a group of novices is sent here to maintain the patterns, long, sweeping arcs around the larger stones, precise ripples radiating from the smaller ones. Your task is to rake the sand without disturbing the arrangement, which sounds simple until you try it. The rakes themselves are beautiful, carved from driftwood and inlaid with tiny abalone chips, but they're about as forgiving as a jealous sea spirit. One wrong step, one careless twitch of your wrist, and you've ruined an entire section of cosmic harmony. The elders say that raking the garden teaches focus and patience. You suspect it's also a way to keep children too busy to get into trouble. The sun is warm on your back as you begin, dragging the rake slowly through the sand, the tines leaving perfect parallel grooves. You take pride in your first few strokes. They're straight even, almost professional looking. Then the wind stirs. In an instant, half your work is blurred into soft, chaotic swirls. You sigh, start again. Around you, the other children work in solemn silence. At least most of them do. One boy across the garden is clearly using his rake to draw an enormous sea turtle. Another has given up entirely and is just making concentric circles around his feet. You glance toward the supervising elder, who is meditating with his eyes closed. For a moment, you consider accidentally raking your initials into the sand, but you resist. The last time someone did that, the garden was completely redrawn from scratch. It took hours. The tricky part is moving between sections without leaving footprints. The sand is so fine that even the lightest step leaves a deep mark. Some novices master the art of hopping from stone to stone like seabirds, but you lack that kind of balance. You stick to the narrow stepping paths laid with flat shells, your rake balanced across your shoulders like a yoke. It's slow work, but strangely hypnotic. The rhythmic scrape of the rake, the shimmer of the sand, the occasional shadow of a seabird gliding overhead. It starts to feel less like a task and more like, well, maybe the adults are right. Maybe it is a little like drawing the universe into order. When the bell rings, you step back to admire the patterns, neat arcs, spirals and ripples, all pristine once more. You leave the garden feeling quietly satisfied and just a little worried. Because tomorrow, the wind will blow again, and the raking will begin all over. In Atlantis, singing is not just for festivals or celebrations, it's a daily spiritual duty. The elders believe that voices raised together create harmony, not just in the air, but in the soul of the city itself. The temple choir is the heart of that belief. Unfortunately, the temple also insists that every child participate, regardless of whether their voice is a golden current or a startled seagull. The choir gathers in the echo hall, a vast chamber shaped like an inverted seashell. The ceiling curves high overhead, catching every sound and sending it back softer, richer, and more haunting. In theory, this means the music always sounds beautiful. In practice, it means even your off-key warbling comes back sounding faintly mystical. Rows of novices in pale blue robes stand in careful lines, their eyes fixed on the choir master, a stern man whose beard is braided with silver threads and whose pitch-perfect hum can silence a room. He begins with breathing exercises. The breath, he says, is the tide that carries the song. You inhale deeply, trying to fill your lungs like he demonstrates, but mostly you feel lightheaded. Then come the vocal warm-ups, long, drawn-out vowel sounds that swell and fade like waves. Around you, some children manage smooth, flowing tones. Others, including you, produce something more like a hesitant porpoise. The day's hymn is called The Song of the Deep, a slow, winding melody meant to echo the pulse of the ocean. The first few lines are gentle, rising like bubbles through water. You do fine there, blending in with the voices around you. Then comes the high note, the one that, no matter how hard you try, makes you sound like you've just stubbed your toe on a coral reef. You give it your best, hoping the hall's acoustics will work their magic. They do not. The choirmaster's eyebrow twitches. Halfway through rehearsal, he stops the song and speaks softly but firmly. Listen for the note before you sing it. Feel it in the heart before it leaves the lips. You nod, as if you understand, though your inner voice whispers that you'd have better luck feeling the note in your left elbow. Still, you try again, leaning into the harmony, matching your breath to the children beside you. For a moment, the sound does seem to carry you. You almost forget about trying to be perfect and just sing. When rehearsal ends, the choir master bows his head. The ocean does not reject a wave because it is small, he says. Every voice has its place. You leave the hall unsure if that was meant to be comforting or just politely vague. Either way, the hymn still echoes in your head as you step outside. A reminder that in Atlantis, even the tone-deaf are expected to sing for the sea. Atlantis has many traditions that sound beautiful until you're the one doing them. The ritual of carrying water. Up a hill is one of those. The elders say it symbolizes bringing the blessings of the sea to the heart of the city, a poetic way of describing the fact that you're going to spend the next hour hauling heavy jugs of water uphill like a very obedient pack crab. The ceremony begins at the lower harbour, where the water is drawn from a sacred inlet said to be touched by moonlight even in daytime. Attendants fill large clay vessels and place them carefully in woven carriers that hook over your shoulders. They tell you to carry the water as if you were carrying the ocean's own heartbeat. This sounds inspiring until you realise the heartbeat weighs about half your body weight and sloshes around unpredictably. The procession moves slowly, single file, along a winding path lined with white stone steps. At first, it feels ceremonial. The sun glints on the water in your vessel, the air smells of sea salt and blooming lotus, and the elders chant softly at the front of the line. But the hill grows steeper, the straps dig into your shoulders, and the rhythmic slosh of water becomes an irritating reminder that with every step, some of your precious load is trying to escape. Children are encouraged to walk mindfully, placing each foot with intention, breathing in time with the chant. You try, but your intention quickly shifts from walk with grace to don't trip and become a waterfall. Somewhere behind you, a novice stumbles, splashing a wave of sacred water onto the path. The supervising priest doesn't scold, but the look he gives could wilt seaweed. You cling to your own vessel a little tighter. Halfway up, you pause at a rest terrace shaded by palm fronds. The elders offer words of encouragement. The sea gives without limit, so must we give. You're tempted to ask if the sea ever had to climb this hill, but your breath is too short, and your sense of self-preservation tells you the question would not be well received. Finally, you reach the summit, where a stone basin awaits in the temple courtyard. One by one, the carriers pour their water in. It splashes and glimmers in the sunlight, each droplet joining the basin's mirrored surface. The elders say the water will be blessed here, then used in ceremonies throughout the city. You step back, shoulders aching, arms trembling slightly but strangely proud. When the ritual ends, you join the others in bowing toward the sea far below. The climb may have been exhausting, but there's a quiet satisfaction in knowing you've contributed, even if your main contribution was learning exactly how heavy spiritual meaning can get when carried uphill in a jug. Atlantis may live and breathe by the sea, but its eyes are always on the sky. The star readers are the ones who make sense of it, the keepers of charts and prophecies who claim to see not just the weather, but the fates of entire lives written in the constellations. The elders say every child must visit them at least once to receive the direction of their celestial current. You're not sure if that means finding your life's purpose, or being told you're destined to trip over your robe forever. The observatory sits atop one of the tallest towers, its roof open like a giant clamshell. The air is cooler here, and the wind carries the faint smell of salt and cloud. Huge bronze instruments surround you, astrolabes, armillary spheres, and long, delicate sighting tubes aimed at points in the heavens. The star readers move among them in long, midnight blue robes stitched with silver thread that catches the light like stardust. Their hair is bound with thin metal circlets, each tipped with a single crystal that refracts tiny rainbows when they turn their heads. Your assigned reader, Mistress Elath, greets you with a warm but piercing smile, the kind that makes you wonder if she already knows the embarrassing thing you did last week. She leads you to a low table set with a polished obsidian bowl filled with water. The sky speaks in many tongues, she says, but tonight it speaks in the language of reflection. She gestures for you to look into the bowl. The water is so still it mirrors the sky perfectly, even though it's broad daylight. You see shapes up there, not just clouds, but faint, pale constellations, as if the stars have decided to stay awake for your appointment. Elath traces patterns across the surface with a slender rod, naming clusters with lyrical names. The leaping dolphin, the spiral wave, the silent moon. She explains how each one governs different aspects of life: courage, creativity, patience, destiny. Then she asks for your birth tide, the exact moment you took your first breath, and begins to hum softly, her fingers flicking droplets into the bowl. You watch the ripples form, catching glimpses of the reflected constellations bending and swirling. She leans close, her voice low. You are a child of the shifting currents. You will never walk only one path. You will cross many tides before finding your own harbour. It sounds mysterious and important, though you also wonder if she says that to everyone your age. When the reading is done, she gives you a small, flat shell marked with a silver spiral. "Keep this," she says. "When you are lost, it will remind you that the stars still see you." You tuck it carefully into your robe pocket, half expecting it to glow. It doesn't. But somehow it still feels like carrying a piece of the sky. And for once you walk away feeling that maybe the star readers really do know something you don't. The healing caverns are Atlantis' secret heartbeat, a place where stone, water and light work together to soothe the body, and supposedly the soul. The elders say the caverns were carved by the sea itself, shaped by centuries of tides and moonlight. The healers say the crystals in the walls hum with restorative energy that can realign even the most stubborn currents within you. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you are willing to see if it works on the ache in your knees from the water-carrying ritual. The entrance is hidden behind a waterfall just outside the city walls. You follow a narrow path, slick with mist, ducking beneath the curtain of falling water into a cool, dim passageway. The air smells faintly of salt and something sweeter, like crushed herbs. Small lanterns line the way, their flames reflecting off the walls and revealing veins of rose quartz, pale jade and smoky amethyst that sparkle faintly in the soft light. The main chamber is vast, its ceiling high enough to make you feel as if you've stepped into the ribcage of some ancient, sleeping giant. Pools of still water dot the floor, their surfaces so clear they look like pieces of the night sky trapped underground. A healer in a long white robe greets you and the other children, her voice as calm as a lullaby. She gestures for you to remove your sandals and step into one of the shallow pools. The water is warm, not just pleasantly warm, but the kind of deep, enveloping warmth that makes your muscles sigh in relief. The healer moves slowly around the group, sprinkling a fine powder into each pool. It shimmers as it dissolves, sending faint ripples of colour through the water. Mineral blessings, she explains, for strength, clarity, and balance. You sink a little deeper, letting the warmth creep into your bones. Then comes the sound. Somewhere deeper in the cavern, a low, resonant hum begins. Not music exactly, but a steady vibration that seems to flow through the water and into you. The healer says the tone comes from crystal bowls placed in hidden alcoves, their notes tuned to the frequencies of the sea. You close your eyes, and for a moment you swear you can feel the hum moving through your ribs like a second heartbeat. Time becomes slippery in the caverns. You might be there for minutes or hours, it's hard to tell. Eventually the hum fades, the healer thanks the stones, and you are guided back toward the waterfall. When you step out into daylight again, everything feels sharper. The green of the leaves, the scent of the air, even the weight of your robe on your shoulders. The elders call it renewal through the earth's embrace. You just know that for the rest of the day, your knees don't hurt, your head feels light, and your heart, whether realigned or not, seems to be humming along with the city itself. Of all the spiritual practices in Atlantis, candle arranging might seem the simplest. No chanting, no balancing on one leg, no carrying heavy water jugs uphill, just candles and a quiet room. But in Atlantis, nothing is ever just anything. Candle arranging is an art form, a meditation, and, if the elders are to be believed, a direct conversation with the cosmos. The way you place each candle is said to shape the flow of energy through the space, which is poetic, but you suspect it's also a very beautiful way to make children into unpaid decorators. The candle hall is small and serene, lit only by shafts of sunlight filtering through high crystal windows. Low tables made of polished coral are covered with rows of unlit candles, some tall and slender, others short and stout, all made of creamy beeswax infused with lotus oil. Their scent is faint but sweet, wrapping around you like a gentle hug. Alongside them are trays of seashells, river stones, and polished bits of mother-of-pearl to use as decorative anchors for the arrangements. Your instructor, Mistress Hallin, glides into the room in her soft grey robe. She begins with a lecture on symmetry, symbolism, and energetic focal points. You're told that candles must be grouped in 3s for harmony, 5s for transformation, or 7s if you're feeling bold and want to open all the gateways of the spirit. You glance at the perfectly aligned examples on her demonstration table and wonder how anyone gets them so exact without a ruler. The work begins. You select 3 candles, the safe number, and place them in a neat triangle. Hallen observes, tilts her head, and asks, "But where is your intention?" You resist the urge to point at the candles and say, "Right there." Instead, you close your eyes for a moment, think of calm waters and open skies, then adjust the triangle slightly. She nods approvingly. It sounds easy, but candle arranging is oddly nerve-wracking. Move one a little too far to the left, and you're apparently inviting imbalance. Place a seashell at the wrong angle, and you've blocked the current. You start to suspect the cosmos is far pickier than anyone admits. The other children work in intense silence, carefully aligning stones and shells like they're setting up an elaborate game of spiritual dominoes. When everyone finishes, the candles are lit one by one. The room fills with a warm golden glow, and for a moment you can almost believe the arrangement really is shaping the air, making it softer, calmer. Mistress Hallen walks between the tables, murmuring blessings and making the tiniest adjustments. A stone shifted here, a shell turned there. When the session ends, you step back into the sunlight, the scent of lotus oil clinging to your robe. The elders say the candles will keep the hall balanced for days. You're not sure about that, but you are sure that if the cosmos depends on the angle of a single seashell, it's lucky you didn't sneeze while arranging it. The sacred Atlantean alphabet isn't just a writing system, it's an entire philosophy disguised as squiggly symbols. The elders say each letter carries a vibrational code that can influence the world around you. A single stroke in the wrong direction can change a blessing into a curse, or a simple greeting into a mild insult about someone's grandmother. This makes learning it a nerve-wracking process, especially when your handwriting still looks like you're drawing sea cucumbers. Lessons take place in the scriptorium, a long, high-ceilinged hall lined with scrolls, inkstones, and desks made of polished driftwood. Sunlight streams through narrow crystal windows, falling in angled beams across rows of apprentices hunched over their work. At the front of the room stands Master Theros, a tall man with ink-stained fingers, and the kind of posture that makes you feel your own spine is slouching in shame. He greets the class with the same line every day. "The pen is your oar. Steer wisely." You begin with the foundation glyphs, simple shapes, or so you think, until Theros points out that your curve is too shallow to hold meaning, or your dot is too forceful for the harmony of the phrase. He demonstrates the proper technique. Hold the reed pen at a gentle angle, breathe as you draw the line, and let your wrist float like kelp in the tide. You try this and immediately smudge the ink with your sleeve. Each glyph is taught with its corresponding chant, which you're expected to hum quietly as you write. Supposedly, the sound tunes the letter so it carries the right energy. You hum along, though your tone wobbles dangerously every time you concentrate too hard on getting the angles right. The more advanced students fill page after page with elegant flowing lines that look like they belong in a temple mural. Your own page looks like the ocean got seasick. Halfway through the lesson, Theros introduces a new symbol, the Leoth, meaning flowing truth. He warns that its upper curl must open like a shell receiving a pearl. You focus, tongue pressed to the corner of your mouth, and manage a halfway decent attempt. Theros glances over your shoulder, nods once, and says, "Better." Now again, until your hand remembers. This is teacher speak for do it 100 more times. By the end of the session, your fingertips are speckled with ink, and your robe sleeve carries a permanent smudge where you've dragged it across your work. You roll up your practice scroll, which is more inkblot test than calligraphy, and tuck it under your arm. As you leave the scriptorium, the elders remind you that one day you'll write blessings, mantras, and maybe even prophecies in this script. Right now, you're just hoping to write your own name without accidentally summoning a minor sea spirit. But in Atlantis, even a clumsy stroke is a step toward mastery, provided you don't spill the inkpot along the way. The shell flute is one of Atlantis's oldest instruments, said to be a gift from the sea winds themselves. The elders claim its voice can soothe storms, charm dolphins, and open hidden doors between worlds. In practice, when you first try to play it, it mostly sounds like a confused whale trying to sneeze. Your music lesson takes place in the Wind Hall, a a long chamber with open arches facing the sea. The sound of waves and gulls drifts in constantly, mixing with the faint scent of salt and sun-warmed stone. The walls are lined with shelves, displaying shell flutes of every size and colour, polished conches the length of your arm, delicate spiral shells that fit in your palm, and rare pink-lipped varieties said to produce the voice of dawn. You're assigned a modest pearly white flute with a spiral so perfect it looks like it was drawn with a compass. Your teacher, Master Varin, has the calm patience of someone who's been listening to beginners squeak into shells for decades. He begins with a reminder: the shell is not a tool, it is a companion. Breathe into it as you would breathe into the world you love. Poetic? Yes, though you suspect he says that mostly to keep you from blowing too hard and deafening everyone within a 10-foot radius. You lift the flute to your lips, place your fingers over the carved holes, and take a careful breath. The sound that emerges is not flattering. It's thin, reedy, and oddly wet-sounding, as if the ocean itself is making fun of you. Varin doesn't flinch. Again, he says, let the wind do the work. You try again, softer this time, and the note comes out smoother, though still far from the voice of dawn promised by legend. The real challenge comes with fingering. The holes are spaced just far enough apart to make your fingers feel like they're being stretched for some secret Atlantean ritual. You fumble, producing a stuttering sequence that sounds like a distressed seagull. Varin demonstrates the correct pattern, his notes rising and falling like a tide. You mimic him, and to your mild surprise, you manage a half-decent phrase, though one unfortunate squeak sneaks in at the end. As the lesson goes on, you start to hear moments of something beautiful in your own playing. A gentle, low note that feels like the sea exhaling. A high, trembling tone that catches the wind and hangs in the air for just a second longer than you expect. You're still far from mastering the flute, but you can glimpse why the elders say it speaks with the ocean's voice. When the session ends, Varin tells you to take the flute home and play to the horizon each morning. You tuck it carefully into its woven kelp pouch, wondering if the dolphins will actually respond. Probably not. But if nothing else, the shell flute might just be your ticket to making the ocean laugh with you, instead of at you. The ceremony of gratitude is one of Atlantis's more solemn traditions, meant to honour the earth, the sea and the sky for their endless gifts. The elders say it connects your body to the living spirit of the land. Your feet, however, will remember it as that time we walked barefoot over every sharp thing in the city. The ritual takes place at dawn in the Temple of Stones, an open courtyard paved not with smooth marble, but with thousands of rounded river stones arranged in concentric circles. The outer stones are warm from the sun, but the inner ones, shaded by the temple's high shell-carved arches, are cool and damp with morning dew. Each step is meant to awaken different energy points in your body. You suspect it mostly awakens your survival instincts. Before the walk begins, the high attendant explains the rules. No running, no hopping, no wincing, at least not visibly. You must place each foot with intention, pause, breathe, and silently thank the world for its bounty. You join the line of children at the courtyard's edge, your robe hem brushing the tops of your bare feet. The stones look harmless enough until your first step. It's not pain exactly, but it's a lot. The stones press into your arches, your toes, even that one spot you didn't know could feel sore. You grit your teeth and take another step, trying to focus on the soft chant of gratitude the elders hum in the background. Around you, some children glide forward serenely as if floating above the stones. Others, like you, move with the careful caution of someone walking across a floor scattered with Lego pieces. Halfway through the spiral, the path narrows. The stones are smaller here, sharper in places, and somehow colder. Your balance wobbles as you try to step only where the elders have smoothed a clear path. A few stones shift under your weight, sending a ripple of tiny clicking noises through the quiet. You glance up at the high attendant, who offers a serene nod that somehow manages to say, "Yes, keep going, but also, don't mess this up." When you finally reach the centre of the spiral, there is a raised platform with a shallow bowl carved from crystal. Inside is a small pool of clear water said to come from the first spring of Atlantis. One by one, each participant steps forward, dips their fingers into the water, and touches it to their forehead. The chill is bracing, and for a moment you forget about your aching feet entirely. The walk back out is easier, partly because the stones feel warmer now, partly because you know the ordeal is nearly over. As you step off the last circle and onto smooth marble again, your feet tingle and your body hums with a strange mix of relief and pride. The elders say you've grounded yourself in gratitude. You just know you'll be sitting down for the rest of the day. The Sun Temple is a place of radiant peace, or, if you're a child in Atlantis, the most glorified napping spot in the city. The elders call it absorbing the golden current. You call it falling asleep in a warm patch like a particularly lazy sea lion. The temple itself is a grand open-air structure perched on a high terrace that catches sunlight from dawn until dusk. Tall columns carved from pale limestone form a wide circle, their surfaces etched with spirals, waves, and the shapes of suns in all their phases. In the centre lies a great disk of polished amber-coloured stone that radiates heat like a hearthstone left too close to a fire. Around it, woven mats and soft lotus fibre cushions are arranged in perfect arcs, each one angled just so to catch the light. The ceremony begins when the sun attendant, a serene woman with hair the colour of summer wheat, invites everyone to sit or lie down on their assigned mats. She speaks in a low, measured voice. Let the light enter you. Let the breath be light. Let the self dissolve into the golden tide. You try to follow along, lying back with your arms by your sides, eyes half closed. The sunlight pours over your skin, warm but not too hot, and you feel your muscles loosen almost instantly. You're supposed to remain aware, not sleeping, but resting in luminous presence. That sounds noble in theory, but in practice, the combination of heat, stillness, and faintly sweet lotus-scented air has your eyelids drooping before the attendant finishes her opening blessing. You hear the occasional sigh from nearby mats, the faint rustle of robes shifting, and somewhere, a pigeon cooing lazily in the rafters. Your thoughts drift. You imagine the sunlight as a soft tide, washing over you in slow waves. You picture yourself floating, not on water, but on light itself. The warmth seeps into every corner of your body, your fingers, your toes, even the tip of your nose. You're vaguely aware of the sun attendant walking among the mats, sprinkling a fine golden dust, ground from sunstones, she once said, that catches the light and makes the air shimmer. At some point, you doze off entirely. It's not a deep sleep, more like hovering in a dream where time doesn't quite exist. When the soft chime of a crystal bell wakes you, you have no idea how long it's been. The sunlight feels softer now, more like late afternoon, and your body is heavy in the best possible way. As everyone rises slowly, stretching and blinking against the light, the sun attendant smiles. You have taken the golden current into your heart, she says. You smile back, resisting the urge to yawn. Whether or not you absorbed cosmic energy, you definitely absorbed a very good nap, and in Atlantis, that might just be the same thing. In Atlantis, you're never just a child. You are, according to the elders, the current expression of countless past selves who have walked, swum, and possibly floated through the ages. Naturally, this means there's a lesson devoted entirely to remembering and recording those past lives. In chalk. The elders call it honouring the river of your soul. You call it guessing who I was while trying not to run out of colours. The past life court is a sun-drenched courtyard paved with smooth slate tiles, each one a perfect canvas. Bowls of chalk sit at the edges, thick sticks in every shade from seafoam green to coral pink, some ground fine enough to stain your fingers for days. The instructor, Elder Malus, gathers everyone in a semicircle and speaks with a reverence usually reserved for temples. Close your eyes, she says, and let the memory of your former selves rise like the moon from the sea. You close your eyes and wait. The others seem to be deep in meditation, their faces serene. Your mind, however, produces a slideshow of unrelated images. A cat, a storm cloud, the bread from breakfast. Still, you pick one and go with it. When Mylis tells you to begin, you crouch over your chosen slate tile and start drawing. Some children sketch elaborate figures, robed sages, armoured warriors, merfolk with flowing hair. Others make scenes, ships sailing under strange constellations, gardens of impossible flowers. You, unsure whether you were ever anyone important, start with a stick figure standing next to what might be a dolphin or might be an oddly curved rock. You add a sun in the corner because every drawing needs a sun. Mylis strolls between the tiles, murmuring encouragements. Yes, that spiral carries the memory of wisdom. Ah, you have captured the spirit of the healer's hand. When she reaches yours, she studies it for a moment, then says, "The simplicity speaks to an old soul." You smile politely, not mentioning that the simplicity comes mostly from your inability to draw feet. Halfway through, she invites everyone to add the colours of your soul's journey. This is your chance to be bold. You grab a stick of brilliant turquoise and shade the background, then scatter dots of gold across the top to represent, well, something celestial. The other children layer on purples, silvers and reds until the courtyard looks like a gallery of dreams from another world. When the drawings are finished, you all walk slowly between the tiles, admiring each other's work. Some are breathtaking. Others look suspiciously like random doodles. But no one laughs. In Atlantis, even the clumsiest drawing might hold a fragment of cosmic truth. At the end, Mylis blesses the tiles with a sprinkle of water from the moon shrine. The colours blur, then fade into the slate as if returning to the sea. You leave with chalk-stained hands and the faint, odd feeling that maybe, just maybe, you have been here before. Or at least that you've drawn this dolphin rock thing in another lifetime. If there is a creature in Atlantis more revered than the dolphin, it is the sacred turtle. The elders say these ancient beings have been alive since before the first crystal towers rose from the sea. They claim the turtles carry fragments of Atlantis's earliest dreams etched into the patterns of their shells, and that feeding them is an act of devotion, a way of keeping those dreams alive. You suspect it's also a way of keeping the turtles too full to wander off into deeper waters. The turtle sanctuary lies at the quiet edge of the city, where the canals widen into a shallow lagoon fringed with coral. The water is so clear you can see every curve of the turtle's massive shells as they drift lazily just below the surface. Some are larger than a small boat, their shells worn smooth by centuries of tides. Others are smaller but no less regal, with spiraled patterns that seem to shift when you look at them too long, as if they're quietly rewriting themselves. You arrive with a basket of offerings, sea lettuce, strips of soft kelp, and the occasional chunk of moonfruit. Each child receives their share, and you're told to kneel at the edge of the lagoon, place your hands in the water, and offer the gift as you would offer your heart. You slide a piece of kelp into the rippling surface. Almost immediately, a great head emerges, broad, wise-looking, with eyes as dark as the deep sea. The turtle blinks once, as if sizing you up, then opens its beak and accepts your gift. The feeding is slow and deliberate. The turtles chew with the patience of mountains, each bite a measured act. You can hear the faint grinding of kelp between their beaks, oddly soothing in its rhythm. One of the younger turtles approaches, bumping gently against your hand, as if asking for more. You oblige, and it lingers, its shell shimmering faintly under the sunlight. The elders encourage you to speak softly to the turtles as you feed them, to tell them your hopes, fears, or secrets. They say the turtles will carry your words into the ocean's memory, where nothing is ever truly lost. You murmur something small, a wish for good weather, maybe, or for tomorrow's meditation session to be shorter than usual. The turtle tilts its head, blinks slowly, and continues eating. Around you, the other children are equally entranced. Some try to reach out and touch the turtle's shells, though the elders caution against it unless invited. One child swears a turtle nodded at them in understanding. Another insists they saw a pattern on a shell change shape mid-swim. The sanctuary is full of murmurs and quiet splashes, the kind of sound that makes time feel less linear, more like a tide moving in and out. When the baskets are empty, the elders signal for everyone to rise. The turtles drift away from the shore, vanishing into the deeper lagoon where the coral gardens begin. For a moment, the water is still, then a single turtle surfaces, lifts its head toward the city, and exhales a long plume of misty breath before sinking again. The elders take this as a blessing. You take it as a sign that turtles are better at dramatic exits than most people you know. As you leave the sanctuary, your hands smell faintly of kelp, and your robe hem is damp from kneeling. You glance back at the lagoon, half hoping to see one of the turtles watching you. The surface is calm now, but you have the strange sense that somewhere below they still remember you, not just from today, but from every visit, and maybe even from lifetimes before. In Atlantis, turtles are not just creatures. They are keepers of stories too old for words, and you've just given them another to keep. The Moon Gate is where Atlantis says goodnight to the world. It's a tall, arched portal of white stone carved with spirals and waves, standing at the eastern edge of the city where the canals meet the open sea. At dusk, when the first silver light touches the water, the people gather here to sing the evening chant, a ritual meant to honour the moon spirit and invite her blessings for the night ahead. The elders say the chant keeps the tides gentle and the dreams peaceful. You suspect it's also their way of making sure everyone's home before curfew. The walk to the Moon Gate is slow and ceremonial. Lanterns flicker along the canal paths, their reflections dancing on the water. The air smells of salt, lotus, and the faint tang of burning incense from the temple district. By the time you reach the gate, the sea beyond is already shifting to that deep, luminous blue that only happens between sunset and moonrise. A pale crescent hangs low in the sky, as if waiting for you. Everyone stands in a wide semicircle facing the sea. The elders begin the chant with a low, steady hum, a sound that seems to rise from the stone itself. You join in, your voice blending with dozens of others until it becomes impossible to tell where yours ends and theirs begins. The melody is simple, long, drawn-out tones that swell and fade like waves. Sometimes the chant dips into a minor key, a note of longing, as though calling to something far away. As you sing, the sea answers. Not literally, of course, though the rhythm of the waves seems to match the rise and fall of the voices. The air grows cooler, the scent of salt sharper. A faint shimmer plays on the surface of the water, as if moonlight is stirring there before it's even reached the horizon. The chant shifts into its final verse, softer now, more like a whisper than a song. You can feel it in your chest, a vibration that's less about sound and more about being part of something bigger than you. The last note fades into silence. For a moment, no one moves. The Moon Gate frames the sea like a painting, the first true moonlight spilling through. An elder steps forward, dips a silver cup into the water, and pours it slowly back into the tide, a gesture of giving back what was borrowed. The rest of the crowd bows toward the horizon. You follow suit, your robe brushing the stone, the sound of the waves filling your ears. When you straighten, the chant still hums faintly inside you, a quiet echo that lingers all the way home. In Atlantis, the night doesn't just begin, it's welcomed, sung into being, and placed gently in the hands of the moon. The temple pools are where Atlantis washes away the day, not just the dust on your skin, but the heavier things, as the elders say. Stray thoughts, tangled feelings, and any lingering bad luck that might have clung to you between sunrise and sunset. The pools are carved into the temple's inner courtyard, ringed with pale stone columns, and fed by underground springs said to be warmed by the earth's own heart. Even from outside, you can hear the faint, musical trickle of water spilling into the basins, a sound that seems to slow your steps without you noticing. Before you're allowed in, there's a short purification rite. You kneel at the edge of the courtyard while an attendant sprinkles your head and shoulders with perfumed water, a cool kiss of lotus and salt. The air inside the temple is warm and still, scented faintly with sandalwood. Lanterns cast rippling gold light over the pool's surface, and the water itself glows faintly, as if moonlight has taken root beneath it. Children are sent to the smaller pool, where the water is waist-deep and pleasantly warm. You step in slowly, feeling the heat seep into your legs, then your back, until your whole body relaxes in one long sigh. The elders tell you to breathe with the water, letting your inhales match the slow lap of the surface against the stone. You try, and for a while you forget you're even meant to be focusing on anything. The world narrows to warmth, quiet, and the occasional echo of laughter from the far side of the pool. Bathing here isn't like the splashing chaos you might imagine from home. It's unhurried, almost ceremonial. Buckets of scented water are poured gently over your shoulders. Attendants offer smooth river stones to rub against your arms and legs, said to draw out the grit of the spirit as much as the grit of the skin. You watch the ripples drift away from you and wonder if they really are carrying something invisible out into the pool. Now and then, an elder walks the pool's edge, murmuring soft blessings. The words blend with the sound of the water until you can't tell which is which. You duck under once, twice, letting the warmth fold over you completely. The world above disappears for a heartbeat, replaced by a muted hum you feel in your bones. When the session ends, you step out slowly, water streaming from your robe-clinging skin. The attendants wrap you in soft, dry cloth, and you find yourself moving more quietly than before, as if you might disturb the calm you've just absorbed. The elders say the temple pools reset the balance within you. You don't know about balance, but you do know that as you leave, your limbs feel lighter, your thoughts less crowded, and the night ahead somehow softer than it was before. The crystal dome is where Atlantis goes to dream together. It's not for sleeping exactly, though you might drift off, but for stepping into the shared dream sea, as the elders call it. The dome itself is a vast hemisphere of clear crystal panels fitted together so seamlessly you can barely see the joins. At night, it becomes a mirror of the heavens, every star doubled above and below, so you feel as if you're lying inside the sky. Before you enter, attendants hand you a thin, soft blanket woven from moon silk. For comfort, they say, though you suspect it's also to keep you from fidgeting. Inside, the air is cool and faintly perfumed with night-blooming flowers. Everyone finds a spot on the smooth, warm floor and lies down in a wide circle, heads toward the center, feet pointing outward toward the dome's edge. The crystal above catches the moonlight and scatters it in pale ripples across your faces. An elder known as the Dreamkeeper sits in the middle of the circle. She has a voice like slow water over stones, and she speaks softly about opening the mind, letting the day's thoughts sink away, and allowing the deep current to carry you. Her words are paired with the faint music of shell chimes swaying high in the rafters. You close your eyes. At first, it's just the usual jumble. The memory of dinner, the shape of your unfinished chalk drawing from earlier, the lingering scent of sandalwood from the temple pools. But slowly, the sound of breathing around you sinks into a single rhythm. Your own breath matches it. It feels like the whole group is exhaling and inhaling as one, like a tide gently rocking back and forth. Some children claim they see visions here, otherworldly cities, dolphins that speak in riddles, vast doors opening into places beyond the sea. You're not sure you believe them, but you do feel yourself sinking into something softer than sleep. The cool crystal under your head, the blanket over your shoulders, the shimmering light patterns across your eyelids. All of it blends together until time begins to blur. At some point, you do drift into dreams. In yours, you're swimming through a tunnel of glowing shells that hum softly when you pass. They don't say anything you understand, but somehow you know they're telling you you're on the right path. Whether that path leads anywhere, you can't say. A gentle bell chimes once, twice. The Dreamkeeper's voice calls you back, as if from very far away. You open your eyes to find the moonlight brighter, the stars sharper. Everyone sits up slowly, some blinking as if they've just returned from long journeys. As you leave the dome, the cool night air feels different, cleaner, more open. Maybe you didn't touch the shared dream sea tonight, but you have the strange, comforting sense that it brushed against you, just enough to leave a whisper behind. And in Atlantis, even whispers can carry you far. The day in Atlantis does not end with a sudden stop. It ebbs, the way the tide withdraws, slowly, deliberately, leaving the shore washed and quiet. After the dream in the crystal dome, you walk home through lantern-lit streets. The canals reflect the lights in shimmering ribbons, and the air smells faintly of salt and warm stone cooling in the night. The voices you hear are hushed, as if everyone has agreed to let the city drift gently into sleep. Your family's quarters are calm when you arrive. A single lamp burns low, casting soft light over the walls. You slip out of your robe and fold it neatly, as the elders have taught you, then sit by the open window. The moon hangs over the sea, painting a silver path that seems to run straight toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, dolphins leap in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the turtles drift in their lagoon, carrying the city's dreams with them. Before bed, you take a small clay cup from the shelf. Inside is water from the moon shrine, saved from a past blessing. You drink it slowly, the coolness settling in your chest. The elders say it seals the day, keeping the good within and letting the rest dissolve into the night. You're not sure if it works that way, but you like the thought of it. When you finally lie down, the sounds of the city fade to a soft murmur. The lapping of water against stone, the creak of a boat shifting in its moorings, a lone gull calling somewhere far away. You close your eyes and let the day play back in fragments. The shimmering shell of the moongate, the warm tide of the temple pools, the whispering patterns in the sand garden, the long hum of the gong of stillness. Atlantis sleeps, but it never stops dreaming. And tomorrow you will wake again to the crystal towers blazing in the sun, to chants and rituals, to lessons and laughter, to moments that feel small now but will grow larger in memory. You will walk the spirals, sing for the sea, feed the turtles, and maybe, if the moon is kind, glimpse the truth in the water's reflection. For now, the tide of the day has gone out. You let it take you with it, into dreams, into the quiet, into the endless, gentle sea.